Oregon State and Washington State are fighting on and off the field to control their own future, and I applaud them.
You are Locked On Pac-12, your daily podcast on the Pac-12 Conference. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On Pac-12. I am your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with our media rights and soon-to-be mostly team-free but beloved Conference of Champions, whatever it may look like in the future. Like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, please and thank you, wherever you listen to or watch this show, which today is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So there is an on the field, off the field kind of a mix of actions, shall we say, where one might be influencing the other a little bit. We'll talk about that. But Oregon State and Washington State. And I was definitely upset that this conversation was taking place at all during a football game on Saturday. That's what the middle of the week is for. Happy Tuesday, everybody. So Oregon State and Washington State sued the Pac-12 because Wednesday, I believe, there was scheduled to be a Pac-12 board of directors, a board of governors meeting, essentially, amongst the current 12 schools in which the members there could vote on matters pertaining to the league, its resources, assets, liabilities, and the like. Oregon State and Washington State said, excuse me, but these people over here have decided they don't want anything to do with this conference anymore. They've decided to leave us in the dust for all the wrong reasons. Why on earth should our future be tied to what they think is right or what they want in the world? And they took it to court. And Gary Libby, shout out to the judge, said, yeah, you guys are right. You know why? Because they're absolutely right. They're absolutely right. And the Cougs and the Beavs as universities are fighting tooth and nail to take control of their future when it has been completely out of their control throughout this entire process of insanity. And I applaud them for doing so. The Pac-12 schools that are departing, which is everyone except Washington State and Oregon State, they basically wanted to meet on Wednesday and say, hey, so we have all these assets, why don't we vote on what to do with them? Oh, by the way, you know what you need to pass resolutions or make decisions as a conference? An overwhelming majority. I believe the number is 8 or 9. Do you think amongst the 10 departing members they would have been able to get 8 or 9 votes to say, rather than leaving this money to the conference, we vote that this money should go to the schools as it would have been had we stayed in the league? You think they would have said that? Because they've all made it very clear that money is the most important thing on planet Earth rather than, the well-being of college athletics. So I'm going to go out on a limb, a really thin and frail tree limb at that, and say they would have been able to get the votes, and they wouldn't even have needed a majority whip in the House like on The West Wing, which is my favorite television show of all time. So basically, the quote that I saw going around was the 10 departing members wanted to make their cake and eat it too, or whatever that expression is, have your cake and eat it too, whatever. You get what I'm saying. And the judge came in and said, no, you don't get to do that. You don't get to affect other people when you are leaving. Here's the way that I thought of it. I have a mostly overwhelmingly male audience out there, so I'll frame it in this way, but the genders can be reversed here. Let's say you and your girlfriend had been living together for a long time. Let's say it had been 10 plus years, perhaps. But you two hadn't necessarily been married, so she's not legally entitled to all of these matters. And you bought something. Maybe you'd had it before, but it's yours because it exists in the house, and she's leaving not because you wanted to break up, but because she wanted to break up. and she wanted to go out and find this other guy who she thinks is better looking than you and has got more money and is way better and everything like that. She's leaving you behind. And then she comes in to the house as she's moving all of her stuff out and says, hey, I would like to please take, I would like to please take, you can make it whatever item you want. That thing that you paid for and that is really yours, but I'm just going to take it. And the guy, Washington State and Oregon State, is saying, no, you cannot do that. You are choosing to leave. This is something, maybe it's a couch that we enjoyed together. I'm not going to allow you to take this couch over to your new boyfriend's house to enjoy over there. I'm not letting that happen. And you know what? They shouldn't, and they aren't. And the judge ruled correctly. These things don't always go the way they should or the way we'd like them to. So it's really nice and I think important to appreciate when they do. Because in no world, when she's choosing to leave you, or if you want to put the shoe on the other foot, if he's choosing to leave her, he or she who is departing should be taking the couch and saying, hey, I know this is the house that we built and the couch goes in there, but I'm taking the couch and going over here. Like, no, this is a house that I'm going to continue to be paying for. And the couch is a part of it. And the couch was bought to be put in this particular house. You said you didn't want to spend any more time on this couch. So don't come in here and say, oh, no, I want to take the couch with me too. No, you don't get the couch. So that's how this situation kind of reads to me. Now, a couple important quotes here. This is from the piece from the Associated Press. A couple other places have reported it. At a hearing in Whitman County, this is a direct quote. At a hearing in Whitman County Superior Court in Washington, Judge Gary Libey, my guy, ruled that this may be the official Gary Libey fan podcast. I don't know if that's appropriate or not in legal circles. Fun fact, I at one point in time wildly entertained the idea of being a lawyer. That was a real career path I considered. Instead, I'm here talking to all of you. Thanks so much. Judge Gary Libey ruled that a board of directors meeting scheduled for later this week with Conference Commissioner George Kliavkoff and university leaders from the 10 departing members cannot take place. That is correct, because other people should not be getting together in the same room with the people who they're trying to make a decision about that is going to continue screwing over more than they already have and vote on whether or not they would like to further dig the graves of those athletic departments and universities writ large. Now, the other thing mentioned here is that another court date is expected. So anyone expecting a resolution or a quick kind of fizzling out of all this sort of stuff, don't get your hopes up there. This is going to drag on throughout the season. I don't know when exactly. I had seen at one point in time and would perhaps make sense that Oregon State and Washington State want resolution by sometime in early October. But this is the Pac-12 we're talking about, or Pac-2, whatever you want to call it. So I'm not going to sit here and get optimistic about, well, maybe it'll get done on the timeline that we want. Yeah, I remember that time really, really well. So what they have ruled at this point in time is that the board meeting cannot take place because they are no longer board members, given that they are going to be departing the league. And basically they had to, as I read about it, they had to solidify in court the fact that the schools were actually leaving. That's a real thing that had to be adjudicated in a courtroom. Well, are they actually leaving? Yes. Yeah, why don't you go look at the documents they've signed, the statements they've made, the posts they've put out, the fact that actual invitations have been extended and accepted by their future conferences, the Big 12, the ACC, and the Big 10. Yeah, that had to be fully settled, but we got that all figured out. So, now that that is figured out, what Oregon State, Washington State are still going after is full control of the Pac-12 assets. And guess what? They should get those too. You know why? They should get those like you should get tickets on Gametime, because then it's not stressful. Buying tickets to your favorite events, it just shouldn't be a stressful thing. Conference realignment shouldn't be stressful for Oregon State and Washington State. They deserve better. But guess what? They can't do anything about it right now, though they are trying, and they have found a little bit of success here, but they're in a tough situation. You can be in a great situation with Gametime, though. They've got flash deals as well, where last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can just stop stressing over tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Forget planning months in advance. Gametime is the place for last-minute ticket deals right up to the day of the event for anything you want, sports, concerts, comedy, theater, or otherwise. I'm a big stand-up comedy fan myself. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Let's keep things rolling, shall we? Because there's still something to get to here with regards to the football component of this, which does come into play. So, on the lawsuit, Oregon State and Washington State have not fully established, though they have made a step with this ruling towards getting full control of the Pac-12 assets, which includes the liabilities, but everywhere that I've seen reported has said that the $50, $60, $65 million in Comcast overpayments will be split no matter what among the 12 schools: USC, UCLA, Utah, Colorado, Arizona State, Cal, Stanford, Washington State, Oregon State. All 12 of them will split it equally because they all 12 benefited equally from the overpayments over a 5-year span. So that's the way it appears, but taking on the Pac-12 assets does include that particular debt, and it's not fully clear what would happen with it and whether or not it gets factored into, hey, if Oregon State, Washington State get, the AP and other places have said it's like $60 million in NCAA tournament units, there might be an emergency war chest in there with tens of millions of dollars in it, who knows what other, the Pac-12 network assets and everything like that. All of that is in there. But does the Comcast debt amount to $50 million that Oregon State and Washington State would then have to pay? Or would the other schools say, hey, we're leaving the conference. That means if we don't get any of the benefits, we don't get any of the debts either. I don't know that dog is going to hunt, because those schools have already benefited from the overpayments and the money is owed to Comcast. So it should be split evenly among the 12 schools, which amounts to a few million per university. But then the Pac-12 assets should absolutely go to Oregon State and Washington State. And because as I said earlier, you do not get to have your cake and eat it too. You do not get to choose to break up with a perfectly nice guy or girl, go to your new boyfriend or girlfriend's place and say, by the way, I'm taking the couch. No, that couch was made for this house. You didn't want to be in this house anymore. That's your choice. You think there are better options out there. Fine. But I'm staying here because this is the place where I'm committed to. This is the place where I want to be. And that couch belongs right there. So Oregon State and Washington State, who have had nothing go their way until this court ruling, absolutely deserve to have that money there. And none of the departing schools, none of them, should get to sniff it. They shouldn't get a single penny. Because every decision that those schools have made, and some are more at fault than others, for sure, we don't need to play the blame game right now, but you know who you are, USC. Some schools have put Oregon State and Washington State in this situation more than others, but they've all done it collectively because they couldn't get it together for this reason or that reason, and everything we've talked about for the last, I don't even know how many months at this point on this show. You do not get to claim any of that because Oregon State and Washington State, legally, it appears they should be entitled to it because they're the only remaining members of the pack. And just logically, you shouldn't get any of it because all you 10 are going to new homes. You're going to be fine. And they're trying to fight for survival up there as best they can. And you've put them in a tough spot. You should not get any of it. I don't want to hear it. Stanford, Cal, Oregon, Washington, Utah, Colorado, Arizona State, USC, UCLA. None of it. It should be all Oregon State and Washington State. I don't care which schools, which programs earn the NCAA tournament units. You chose to forego being a part of this league because you wanted to go chase more money and all this sort of stuff elsewhere. That's your choice. But actions have consequences. And if you can't deal with the negative side of it, then maybe you shouldn't have done it. But I suspect they won't care that much as well because of how much more money they're going to be making, particularly the 4 going to the Big Ten. So it shouldn't be that big of an issue to them anyway. Now, on the football side of things, because I do think that ties in here, there are no programs who would benefit more from ending the year in the top 25 when they weren't necessarily expected to. Or Oregon State was, of course, but Washington State wasn't, than the Beavs and the Cougs. Because as you're looking to the future, there are still multiple options on the table that I talked about over the summer. The reverse merger, where the Mountain West basically goes away and they just operate under the new brand logo of the Pac. And by the way, George Kliavkoff, I believe, was named in this lawsuit as well. And Washington State and Oregon State, especially Washington State, has indicated that George Kliavkoff has not been involved in their future realignment plans. I think Oregon State said that as well, but I know Washington State did. Yeah, that is giving every indication of whatever conference Oregon State and Washington State join, they don't want George Kliavkoff anywhere near it, and I can't blame them. Now, do the university presidents deserve a lot of blame because George K. brought them a deal for $30 million a school that would have kept all 10 teams together, including Colorado, and they turned it down because they thought they were more valuable? Yep, absolutely. I don't think Oregon State and Washington State, we don't know for sure. I'm going to, again, go out on the frailest of limbs. I don't think the Beavs and the Cougs were the schools saying $30 million a year. No, go get 50. I have a suspicion. I have a sneaky suspicion, everybody, that it was somebody else or multiple somebodies else that said, no, we're worth $50 million a year. Okay. So I don't think they want anything to do with George Kliavkoff. I don't think they should. I don't think they owe him anything. He hasn't been able to give them, literally anything. So going forward, I don't expect him to really be around for that much longer. And he was named in the lawsuit that ended up going in favor of the plaintiffs. So preponderance of the evidence here in the eyes of the judge is that George Kliavkoff and the Pac-12 conference and the former board members and everybody, they don't have the authority to make decisions concerning Oregon State and Washington State's future, and they shouldn't, because Oregon State and Washington State, for once, should be able to try and forge their own path. It's still not a great path compared to what the other schools are getting, but it's nice to see them get something because they've had nothing to go off of this entire time. So on the football field, though, as you look to build a conference in 2024 and beyond, the stronger your football programs finish this year, I'm not saying it makes a monumental difference, but it can certainly help. The perception of your league increases if both, let's just say, Oregon State and Washington State in the regular season go 10-2 for the Beavs and 9-3 for the Cougs. Let's say that happens. How much stronger does a new Pac look with those two as the flagship programs than if Oregon State were to go 8-4 and Washington State goes 6-6 or 5-7? How much stronger? Not bad, right? This is a league and a world and a sport that values perception. It absolutely matters. So you're still going to be able to build a league, potentially, if that's the route they decide to go. I think they have to get full control of the Pac-12 assets first, but there are still multiple options on the table. But you need that league to remain as strong as possible now and in the future, perhaps. And if you're able to go into it next year, whatever it looks like, with two programs that are fresh off like a top 12 finish from the Beavs, maybe an 11-2 season, New Year's Six bowl game, who knows? If you're able to do that, and Washington State, let's say, goes 9-3 regular season, wins a good bowl game against a quality opponent, maybe from the SEC or the Big Ten, and they finish at 10-3, that league feels at least slightly stronger, and your perception is greater. Is it still, is it going to be enough to have them still be considered an autonomous or a Power 5 conference? I mean, probably not, depending on who you add and how they perform in 2023. But it certainly can't hurt, and I think it can help a little. But that's kind of the question. And I've long argued, I think the Pac's days as a power conference are done, because I don't know how they retain the same status, rights, and privileges and money when, however many of their schools, but only 2 of them will have competed at a Power 5 level the year before. I don't see how the other conferences look at that, go, yeah, we're okay with this arrangement. Sure, we're putting in more money and playing a tougher schedule because we have tougher teams to play. But yeah, we'll just kind of give them that. Haven't seen any indication that'd be the case. There are legal technicalities. Maybe the Pac would be able to skirt by as an autonomous 5 or Power 5 conference. I have my doubts for sure. So I think they can help themselves a little bit. I think they're doing that so off the field, but they can certainly do it on the field. A couple of things to get to still on the show. One about George Kliavkoff and why I'm not a tinfoil hat kind of guy, and then a couple of big questions that I asked before the season that we're starting to get answers to, or that we don't have answers to yet, that are going to affect who wins this conference in 2023. You're going to be winning if you make the right bets, of course, at FanDuel, but you can place all the bets you want to and get ready for the NFL season, which is underway. Incredible offers are on there from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets. Guaranteed. That's it. Plus, all customers who bet $5, just 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now's the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use. You can bet on everything from spreads to player props and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Okay, so one mailbag thing with 2 questions. YouTube comments, always available, or Twitter at smalls_55 or at LO_Pac12. DMs and mentions wide open to get a question answered here on the show about realignment and otherwise. The story that won't go away, and otherwise, the stuff that I really enjoy talking about football. So, this from PCS Pounder. I don't know. I just hope that's not inappropriate. Considering 1, the lawsuit today, temporary restraining order granted to Oregon State and Washington State, and 2, George Kliavkoff currently hanging in Montana, any thoughts to a sort of hypothesis that George was quote unquote paid to be the Grim Reaper? I assume you mean the idea that George K was paid to be a figurehead that took all the blame and heat while the other schools made their moves. Yeah, I'm not buying it. I don't really like. Why would they need that? They're either prepared for the PR that comes with, killing the Pac-12 and going to a different conference, or they're not. I think they made these moves behind George Kliavkoff's back in some instances. And kept him in the dark, and based on what he said publicly and how the whole situation played out, he was kept in the dark. So, and he was just not aware of USC and UCLA going to the Big Ten, or what Colorado had been doing, and Arizona and everybody like that. Like he always seemed like he was behind, and it felt. I don't think he got hired. And then they told him, yeah, by the way, we're going to blow up this conference and we want you to take the blame for it, but we're going to pay you a bunch of money to do it. I think that's a little bit too tinfoil hat conspiracy for me. I see how you made a hop, skip, and a jump to get there, but that's a hop, skip, and a jump mentally that I'm not willing to make at this point in time until I see evidence to the contrary. Like, I am just not. That's a little bit too, there are a lot of back alley communications and behind the scenes and undercover and all this sort of stuff. But I don't think George Kliavkoff came in with the knowledge that USC and UCLA were talking to Fox, or that they would be willing to jump to the Big Ten. I think he came in thinking he was taking over a strong conference that was starting to reestablish its football brand. And then USC said, nope, we're leaving. We're taking UCLA with us. And eventually we'll get everybody else. So no, but interesting question. Speaking of questions, I asked big questions for every team coming into this year. I have some thoughts on a couple as we talk about football for today, which is always a nice, refreshing break, at least for me. So One big question that I asked coming into the year that we still don't have an answer to, that materially affects the Pac-12 championship game and who plays in Las Vegas in early December this year, is Cam Rising's health. He has not played a snap of football. He won't play this week against Weber State. By the way, week 3 is outside of Washington, Michigan State, which now has more outside noise than football noise. Not a lot of interesting games in college football this week. The Pac-12 is not immune to that. I don't even know what I'm going to do for the Pac-12 prime picks. I'm going to have to do what I don't like doing, which is picking massive, massive spreads. Because those are the games that are available this week. But Cam Rising will not play this week against Utah, so he'll make his debut against UCLA. My big question for Utah coming into the year, is he going to play all 9 conference games? He hasn't played any of the non-conference. Utah has been fine anyway. They will be again this weekend. What's going to happen with him? Because I think that Utah's 2 wins are all the more impressive with, scraping by against Baylor, dominating Florida in week 1 with Bryson Barnes at the helm. But guess what? I don't know if you've noticed, this league is stacked. We have 8 teams in the top 25, most ever. I just don't see how Utah can sustain a top 15 level nationally in the Pac-12 with Bryson Barnes at the helm. So the question continues to be that we don't have an answer to. How healthy is Cam Rising going to be? Like if I asked you right now, what are the odds he plays all 9 Pac-12 conference games? Gosh, who's putting their confidence level anywhere close to 90 or 100%? I would put it at 60% at the maximum that he plays every Pac-12 game. And one game is certainly going to be the difference between reaching and not reaching the title game in Las Vegas. And look, Bryson Barnes and Nate Johnson, they've done more than an admirable job filling in his absence. It's not going to be enough in the Pac-12. A couple other things that we are getting answers to for big questions. What is the UCLA quarterback situation going to be? Now, I love UCLA's front 4. I think the rest of their defense is solid. I think they have good weapons and a smart coach. My big concern with them coming into this year, and continues to be, the quarterback situation. You don't know who's starting in the best quarterback league in America. That concerns me. Now, it appears they know, and it's Dante Moore, and it should be Dante Moore. Now, that's still a big ask, even of a guy as talented as Dante Moore is, to come in as a true freshman and go up against the Michael Penixes and Caleb Williams and Bo Nixes and Cam Risings and Shedeur Sanders and Cam Wards of the world and go out there and outduel those guys on a weekly basis. So I think there are elements of UCLA's team around him that I like. But do I feel like it's dominant enough to where Dante Moore would be able to play at just okay or make some freshman mistakes and get UCLA to the Pac-12 title game like Josh Pate thinks they're going to do? No. Now, is their schedule favorable? Yes, and that helps. It really, really does. I still think they're a 7 or 8 win team. I think starting Dante Moore is the right thing to do. The stars just don't align for UCLA to get to a Pac-12 title game this year. Another one, and we'll close with this and talk about it more tomorrow on the show as well, is, I didn't know coming into the year, what is Colorado? I didn't put them in the Pac-12 prime picks in week 1, bet against them in week 2 with my picks and, was punished accordingly for that. Don't worry, Pac-12 prime picks, came out victorious in week 2, and they are 7-3 on the season. I am so worried about this week, though. This would be the week to fade the picks. It really, really would. But I looked at Colorado and said, I'm not betting them in week 1 because I don't know what they're going to be. I feel like 20.5 is too many, but what are they going to look like? What are they going to play like? Who's going to be good? What are they going to do? Now we know. They look like a top 20 football program in the country. They look like a well-oiled machine offensively, made some adjustments defensively. And do I have questions about them contending in the Pac? Sure. That's a question we're going to dive into more on tomorrow's show, but are they a lot closer to contending than I thought and many others? Yeah, absolutely. Can they beat the best teams in this league? We'll see how they look week 1 of conference play against Oregon, but the early indicator would be yes. Of the 8 Pac-12 teams in the top 25, which one can Colorado absolutely positively not beat? Early returns would be they could pull an upset, if it would even be considered that at this point with where they're ranked, of any of them. But I think they have a clear identity offensively, some playmakers defensively, still a couple questions over there, but they played much better against Nebraska. We'll talk about that more on tomorrow's show. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time, and have a wonderful rest of your day.